Today we're going to spend some time working on circles. I know you worked on circles in geometry, but I also want to kind of review them today so we can look at the completing the square and our domain and range with circles as we did with the parabolas earlier in the week. So the standard form of a circle is going to be at x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. And this is going to look somewhat familiar to us because at h and at k, notice we have that minus h minus k. We had that with our parabola, with the vertex of the parabola. Now we're going to take that h and at k value and we're going to make it the center of our circle. What it's equal to is going to be the radius squared. So if we take the square root of that value, I'm going to get my radius. So in our example, our first example here, I'm asking you to find the center and the radius, and then graph the function, or not the function, the expression, the equation, and then determine the domain and the range of that. So we're set up in standard form, which is kind of nice. So we have x minus 2 squared and our y plus 1 squared. That's going to give us our center. Remember, our center, we're going to take the opposite of what's with x and the opposite of what's with y. So we're going to take the 2 and negative 1. And that's going to allow us to find the center of this circle. So we can go ahead and graph that point, 2, negative 1. And we also know the radius. The radius in this case is the square root of 9, which is going to be 3. So from my center, I'm going to go out in all directions 3 units. It's going to be very difficult at an angle to be able to go out 3 units. So what I'm going to do is count up 3 vertically, count down 3 vertically, go over 3, and go over 3. So this is going to give me kind of my reference points, and I can go ahead and draw in, hopefully, a nice smooth circle. Some of them, I know they don't look all that great, but with a little bit of practice you can draw somewhat of a circle. Hopefully it won't be just nice straight lines. From here, we can go ahead and find our domain and our range. Domain, remember, is the x values. So if I were to look at just the x values that this graph consists of, I know that I'm going from this point to this point. It doesn't matter how you think of it. So I know my domain then is from negative 1 to 5. And I can touch negative 1 and 5, so I'm going to put my brackets to show that it's inclusive, and I'm negative 1 to 5. My range is my y values, and I'm going from this height, as far up on the y-axis I can go, and I'm coming down to this point. So my y values that I can have is going to be negative 4 all the way up to 2. Again, inclusive. So negative 4 to 2. And that's going to give us our domain and our range. Now, of course, we're going to make this a little more complicated because we're going to be able to complete the square. Your favorite. I know it's your favorite. So, can we identify the center and the radius and then graph and determine the domain and our range? Well, the first thing we got to do is be able to get it into standard form. Standard form, we're going to get our x's together and we're going to complete the square. We're going to get our y's together, so y squared minus 12y. And we're going to set that equal. We're going to take this constant value and move it over there by itself. That's going to start our radius. Not quite the radius, but it's going to start it. We're going to go ahead and complete the square with just the x values. So I'm going to take my negative 8, I'm going to divide by 2, and I'm going to square that. So negative 8 divided by 2 is negative 4, squared gives me 16. And remember, if we do something to one side of an equation, we've got to do it to the other. So we're going to add 16 to the other side as well. We're going to take that negative 12 with the y's, and we're going to do the same thing, complete the squares with the y's. So we take negative 12 divided by 2 and squared, we get a plus 36. So I'm going to add 36 to the other side as well. Now we can go ahead and factor our right side. We get x minus 4 squared. To that we're going to add y minus 6 squared. Recall that this negative 4 is coming from when I take negative 8 and dividing it by 2. This negative 6 comes from negative 12 divided by 2. So that's a nice quick way of being able to figure out what that value is going to be. Here I'm going to take 36 and add it to 16 and add it to 3. So what do we got? We got 30, 40, 52, 55. That's a rough number, isn't it? but we can work with it, I suppose. So now we can go ahead and find our center. Our center is going to be at 4, 6. Our radius, so look at that radius, 55. I don't know the square root of 55. You may, but I don't. So we're going to just go ahead and put the square root of 55. I know that it's approximately, well, we know it's between 49 and 64. 49 would be 7 squared, and 64 would be 8 squared, and it's closer to 49, so I'm going to approximate that about 7.2, 7.3-ish. And we'll talk about how we can work that into our points, into our domain and our range here in a second. So let's go ahead and graph what we know. We know the center is going to be 4, and we're coming up to 6. So there's that. And then the radius about 7, so we can come down 4, 5, 6, 7-ish. We can come up 7-ish. So I'm going to run off of paper in 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7-ish. I'm going to come out 4, 5, 6, 7-ish. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 again, a little 7-ish. So roughly, we're going to try to make a nice, decent circle if we can. So that's not too bad, I don't think. So how do we find that domain, and how do we find the range? Remember, our domain is our x value, so we're coming from this point all the way out to this point. So what is actually happening? We're taking this x value, which was 4, and we're adding the square root of 55 to it, and we're subtracting the square root of 55 from it. So we can take that domain is going to be, what was that? That was 4 minus the square root of 55. So that's going to give us that value there. And if I take 4 and add it, it's going to give me this point out here. So my domain is going to be from 4 minus radical 55 to 4 plus radical 55, inclusive. My range, we're taking our points, and our graph is going to go from here to here. So my range is taking this y value and adding the square root of 55, and then also subtracting the square root of 55. So to get to this point down here, I can take my y value, which is 6, and subtract the square root of 55 off of it. So I get 6 minus the square root of 55. And my high point would be the 6 plus the square root of 55. And that's going to give us our range for this circle. And that gives you hopefully an idea and a refresher on how to find the center and the radius of a circle, along with finding the domain and the range of our circles. Good luck and enjoy the circles.